I found her in the lower pasture the morning the frost came early, back when I still walked out to check the fence line before the sun had cleared the ridge. She was down in the mud where the creek bends, wings folded wrong, one flank torn open and gone the color of old rust. I'd lived at Aldermore Reach long enough to know what a dragon track looked like in soft ground, but I had never once thought I'd stand this close to one, let alone a dying one. I want to say I thought it through. I didn't. I set down the fence pliers, walked to the barn, and came back with the horse blanket and the jug I keep for the mares when they foal hard. She watched me come, didn't lift her head more than an inch, didn't so much as flare a nostril, just tracked me with one gold eye gone dull at the rim, the way a body's eyes go when the fight has mostly left it. I knelt in the mud beside a creature that could have taken my arm off without trying, and I put the water where she could reach it. She drank like she hadn't in days. Maybe she hadn't. I'd lost Wren 3 winters before that. Fever, the kind that comes on fast and doesn't care how much you beg it. She was 11. I tell you that not because this dragon was any kind of stand-in for my girl. She wasn't, and I never once let myself pretend otherwise. But because a man who has sat up all night with someone dying knows the particular quiet of it, and I recognized that quiet the moment I knelt down in that pasture. I wasn't going to leave her to die alone in the mud any more than I could have left Wren. It took the better part of the morning to get her into the old hay barn, mostly her own doing, dragging herself a body length at a time while I packed grass under her belly so the wound wouldn't drag in the dirt. By midday, I understood why she'd come as far as she had before going down. She was carrying an egg, one, tucked high against her ribs where a dragon keeps such things, still weeks off from ready by the weight and warmth of it. She hadn't been running from the wound. She'd been running towards somewhere safe enough to stop. I cleaned that gash as best I knew how, packed it with the same salve I use on the horses when barbed wire gets the better of them, and I sat with her through that night and every night after. She never spoke, not in words I had, but there's a language that doesn't need any. The way she'd let her breathing slow when I was in the barn, and go ragged and quick if I stepped out too long. I started sleeping on a cot by the door. Word got round, the way it does in a place small as Aldermore Reach. Some folks came to look and left quiet. A few came with worse ideas, old grudges from the border raids, men who'd lost stock or kin to dragons they never troubled to sort one from another. I stood in that barn door with a pitchfork I had no real intention of using, and told them she wasn't going to hurt anybody, least of all in the state she was in, and that they'd have to go through me first. Nobody did. I think mostly they just wanted somewhere to put their fear, and I gave them a door to put it against instead. She held on longer than I thought a wound like that should let her. 2 weeks, then 3. I fed her what I could, the mare's grain, fish hauled up from the creek, once a whole side of a slaughtered hog I couldn't rightly afford to give away. Watching her get no better, only steadier in the way a person gets steady near the end, when the fighting's done, and what's left is just the waiting. On the 19th night she pulled herself up, more strength in it than I'd seen from her in a week, and worked the egg loose from where she'd carried it, nudging it into the straw I'd banked up in the driest corner. Then she looked at me. A long look, the gold in her eye gone soft instead of dull, and put her head down beside it, not over it, beside it, like she was showing me where to stand, instead of asking me to stand guard. I understood her plainly enough. I sat down next to that egg, and I stayed there while her breathing went slow, and slower, and then it didn't go at all. It wasn't the wound taking her quick in the end. Whatever had torn her open days before had simply worn her down past mending, the way any bad wound will, if it's carried far enough, and cared for too late. I want that said clear, because I've heard plenty of stories about dragon mothers dying to bring a hatchling into the world, and that wasn't this. She'd already laid her egg long before I found her. What she'd been carrying to my barn wasn't a birth. It was a chance for the one she'd already given life to. I buried her on the rise above the creek, next to no one, because there was no one else to put her next to. And I stood there a long while with my hat off, same as I did for Wren. The egg hatched on a wet morning 6 weeks later, a scrawny thing the size of a barn cat, all elbows and wet folded wings, blinking up at me like I was the whole of her world, because for the moment, I was. I named her nothing, didn't feel it was mine to give. I fed her minced meat off my palm and let her sleep curled against the stove, and I told myself I hadn't the faintest idea what I'd do when she was grown enough to need more than a farmhand and a barn. I didn't have to wonder long. 2 months on, the sky over Aldermore Reach went dark at midday, not with storm but with wings, a column of them, riding low and slow, banking down toward my fields like they already knew the way. I stood in the yard with the hatchling pressed against my leg, too old by then for fear to do me much good, and watched the lead dragon land, bronze-scaled, ancient by every mark of scar and weathered ridge on him, easily 3 times the size of the mother I'd buried. He didn't roar. He didn't so much as bare a tooth. He lowered that great head down level with mine, and breathed in slow, like he was reading the whole of the last 2 months off the air itself. The salve, the hay, the grief, worked into the boards of my barn. Sovereign Kestrion, they told me after, when the rest of the Dominion's riders had come down to stand quiet around the yard. He'd been her kin, uncle, near as I could work out the word for it, and they'd been searching every border settlement for a season, certain she'd gone to ground somewhere to die alone, rather than be found weak. He looked at the grave on the rise a long moment, looked at the hatchling, leaning into my leg, like she'd never once considered leaning anywhere else. Then he looked at me, and I swear there wasn't a shred of judgment in it, only something closer to gratitude, too large to fit in a look at all. They didn't kneel. I want to say that plain, because I'd have been ashamed if they had. She wasn't owed a debt paid in ceremony, and neither was I. What they did instead was simpler. Kestrion asked, in a voice like stone settling, whether I'd stand as the hatchling's keeper until she was old enough to choose her own road, human and dragon both agreeing it was no small thing to ask of a man with a farm to run alone. I said I would. I'd have said it even if he hadn't asked. They come by Aldermore Reach still, every season or two, never more than a few at a time, never any trouble in it. They check on her. They check on me too, in their way. Kestrion sitting in the yard some evenings while I finish the chores, saying nothing, just keeping a tired old farmhand company the same way I once kept a dying mother company in a barn that smelled of hay and mud. I never did stop grieving my girl. I don't imagine I'm meant to. But some nights, watching the hatchling chase barn cats across the frost with wings too big for her yet, I think Wren would have liked her fine. I think she'd have liked that her father found a way to sit up with somebody again.